I was just made aware of the fact that I guess many people don't talk about Abdullah and the law of assumption here on TikTok. Woman made a video about Abdullah and him teaching Neville Goddard, and she brought up many facts about, I guess, black people not being considered in the law of assumption community and not really being talked about, or not feeling like manifestation is actually for them, which is crazy. But these are things that I never really considered myself, but they are valid and good to consider. So I'm glad she brought that to my attention. So I wanted to speak briefly about Abdullah and who he was, what he means to this community, and what he means to the law of assumption, and a lot of the spiritual teachings that have become mainstream in recent years. Abdullah was Neville's teacher, his mentor, and if you pay attention, our actual channel is called Neville Goddard, son of Abdullah. And people used to give me shit about that. They were upset at first because they'd say, Neville's not the son of Abdullah. What do you think this is? Like, I didn't mean it that way. What I'm telling you, and like I told them, Neville Goddard is the spiritual son of Abdullah the Ethiopian mystic, or Abdullah the Ethiopian rabbi. All of the law of assumption teachings that Neville got were from Abdullah is the one that taught him how to use the law in his life, to actually believe in his assumptions so that he could change things in his 3D reality. The girl told a story like this. I'll tell y'all the story just in case you don't know. Abdullah is the one that helped Neville get back to Barbados when Neville had not been back to Barbados in, I believe it was years. He really had a deep burning desire to go home, but this was during the Great Depression, 1930, that area of time. He had no money because he was unemployed. At this point in time, Neville was a dancer on Broadway, and all of the Broadway shows were down. Nobody was hiring dancers. We can't really fathom that right now, but there was nothing going on. Think of like COVID, how stuff was kind of shut down. It was crazy just like that. So Neville, having no money, having this desire, he's hanging out with his teacher, Ab. He asks Ab, or he says to Ab, I have a desire to go back home to Barbados. So Abdullah responds, Neville, you are in Barbados. Neville responds to Abdullah, he's like, basically, bro, what are you talking about? I'm in New York right now, and I have no money, I have no job, I have no way to go back home to Barbados. Why are you telling me that? And then Abdullah proceeds to tell him again, you are in Barbados. Don't tell me about going to Barbados. You can't tell me you're going to Barbados when you already went to Barbados. So Neville starts to get the message at this point. I think he may have asked him, said something again to Abdullah, and Abdullah kind of shunned him at that point, like, all right, man, go somewhere. So he sat doing this. He sat doing an imaginal act. Neville Goddard did. He would go to sleep at night. He would do what we call a state akin to sleep. This is what Abdullah told him to do. He would go fall asleep in his bed in New York City, but he would act as if he was falling asleep in the bed in his mother's home, meaning the bed at his childhood home in Barbados. So he would fall asleep thinking that he was in Barbados. A part of that state akin to sleep was not only falling asleep thinking that he was in Barbados, but with having all of the sensory perception of him being in Barbados, meaning he thought of New York at a distance of 2,000 something miles from Barbados when he fell asleep, that his physical body was in Barbados. He saw the island. He saw the palm trees as he fell asleep. He really connected with his visceral emotions his perception to say like, yo, I'm here. So he did this, right? Nothing happened the first night. Nothing happened the second night. Nothing happened the third night. I think it might have been maybe like a month or two at this point, and then he goes back to Abdullah and he's like, I still have no money. I still have no job, and I'm still not in Barbados. Like, at this point, he only had a short period of time because he was trying to get there for the holiday. So Abdullah says, don't tell me that you were in Barbados. You went to Barbados. So Neville again says, but I'm telling you, it's not working. So Abdullah didn't, go back and forth with Neville at that point. I believe he just walked into the room and closed the door on him. That could be a metaphor for saying, once you do your imaginal act and you continue to do it, you close the door on it. Abdullah detached from Neville, in a sense, to tell Neville, detach from the desire, because you already have it. So what are you sitting here upset about? So lo and behold, Neville keeps doing the imaginal act every night, right? He does this for about 4 months before his older brother, ran the family store back in Barbados. So lo and behold, his brother calls him and sends him some type of telegram or something saying, Neville, I want all of the family to be back in Barbados for Christmas this year. We haven't had that in years. I know you're not working right now, so you don't have any reason to say that you're not going to come home. So here's $50. Here's a ticket to get on a ship. Back then they had planes going everywhere. So he said, here's a ticket to get on a ship to come home. This $50 is for you, and just to spend while you're on the ship. I'll take care of all of the tips, so you don't even have to worry about that. So he gets this, and then he goes and tells Ed, like, I'm going to Barbados. It's crazy. My brother said this, and he's like, I told you, you went to Barbados. You're already in Barbados. You went. So Neville responds to him again, like, I know. He's like, but I'm going to Barbados, and I have to go Sturridge. Sturridge was what I believe probably like coach. So he's like, all right, I'm going to go Sturridge. And then Abdullah responds to him and says, no, Neville, you went to Barbados and you went first class. So Neville, not thinking of anything, just takes what Abdullah says and just brushes it off and goes back about his business. So lo and behold, he actually gets a call from I believe the steamship company, and they tell him, you were supposed to be going Sturridge, but now you can actually go first class after we make this stop. So he wanted to go tell Abdullah this information, but he's like, at this point, he knows the man would not be moved by the information because he already told him what was going to happen. He was just attempting to convince Neville of the law of assumption, not himself. So he's excited, and this is what happens. And Neville actually goes to Barbados, enjoys himself with his family. And after that, he basically comes back a new man. We can go into that at a later time. But yes, Abdullah, the Ethiopian mystic, Abdullah, the Ethiopian rabbi, he is the one that taught about the law of assumption. So all of these creators that you see on here talking about the law of assumption, it all comes from Abdullah. And let's not even say it all comes from Abdullah. Let's say it comes from the tradition that Abdullah learned